Hello, Anna. Welcome to Functional Nutrition Radio. We're excited to have you on for Patient Files podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to deep dive into your health journey, just because it's actually been really cool to see the things that you've gone through, and also with us. And just as we keep unraveling puzzle pieces, I love it. So share with us real quick. Just introduce yourself, who you are, what do you do? All the basics.
Yeah. I'm Anna. I'm 32 years old. I'm a mom of a 2 year, 7 month old and a 7 month old. They're exactly 2 years apart. I'm talking by like 4 days.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. My
Yeah.
kids are 3.5 to the day. So my son is
Okay.
August 10th and my daughter is February 10th. So exactly 3.5 years apart.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Um, so mama two, I'm married, and I am currently a facility administrator at a dialysis clinic, but I've been a registered nurse for 10 years, almost 10 years.
Nice. Nice. Praise you. Because my mom is starting her dialysis journey. So I am so thankful for practitioners like you that have to do, that kind of stuff, even if it's like
Mhm.
running the practice, still it's so needed. Well, so tell us, like, why did you even think about looking for getting help in this area, whether it's like just nutrition or maybe it was just like your health, like I just don't feel well and just trying to
Mhm.
branch out of like typical, oh, like I usually go see my MD, like let's try someone different. Like what made you think like let's go find help?
Um, I have been on a health journey for a long time, trying out different things. And I think I put on there things that weren't sustainable. Like I was doing them the wrong way, what I consider the wrong way, without really knowing it. But it's because I wasn't educated and I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, you
Yeah.
hear somebody say, oh, well, I started cutting out this and I lost this many pounds, or I started taking this and I was able to do this. And you hear all these different things. And you're like, well, if it worked for that person, maybe it'll work for me.
Yeah.
So, I've tried intermittent fasting. I've done keto, like super strict keto, less than 20 grams of carbs a day.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
I've done 1,200 calories a day. I've done intense exercise. I've done it all. And it has worked in the past,
Yeah.
but it hasn't been sustainable. I
Yeah.
would lose the weight, and just as quickly as I would lose it, I would gain it right back. So it reached the point where, like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when I had my son, like I was miserable. I was so miserable. And after I had my son, I was training for a 10K and I started gaining weight. And I'm like, how in the world am I gaining weight when I'm doing all this exercise? I was able to lose about 5 pounds by the end of it, but I'm like, 5 pounds, and I've been training for a 10K. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
Um, so that's when it kind of started. Then I got pregnant again. I had my daughter, and I was miserable. And anything I tried wasn't working. So that's when I turned to the functional medicine route, because when I went to my postpartum appointment for my son and I was back down to my pre-pregnancy weight, my OB, she said, "Oh my gosh, like you're already back down to your pre-pregnancy weight. That's great." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't want to be here. I want to be less than what I am." And I'm like, "How do I do that?" She's like, "Follow a low carb diet and exercise." I said, "I do that, and I've been doing that." And I
Yeah,
said,
I wanted to ask because you said you would gain it right back. And I think it's important because I know people will be like, oh, well, she probably just fell off. That's why I gained it right back. So when you say you gained it right back, were you still in like using keto? It worked, you were losing weight, and then you gained it back. Were you still doing keto, or were you like you did fall off and then you weren't following it and that's why you gained it back?
I wasn't following super strict keto,
Okay.
because I couldn't maintain it.
Yeah, for
Like I
sure.
had no energy. I'm like
Yeah.
eating fat bombs trying to just have energy because I'm
Yes.
so tired, because I'm so depleted of carbs.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I stayed low carb, but not low carb enough to where
Got
I
it.
was technically in ketosis.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Cool. I knew people like would be thinking that when you said that. I'm like, let me ask her just so she can clarify it. Because
No,
yeah,
yeah, I get it.
everyone's quick to be like, well, you gained it right back because yeah, you fell off, but like you were still doing things pretty right in the standard of, I mean, that's pretty standard of lose weight, eat less carbs, move more, kind of eat less in general. I would say that's like your typical recommendation that you'd find online. So you were still kind of doing that. And
Yes.
then were you with like PCOS and where did all of those diagnoses lie? Was this before you started having issues, or did you uncover these when you were having issues and you're like, no, I want to be less, like what's going on? Why is it so hard for me?
No, so I've known that I had PCOS probably since I was like 22, 23. I was
Okay.
working night shift at the hospital. I had extreme pelvic pain. Like so much so where I was like, there is something wrong with me. I went to a gynecologist. That's when I got the PCOS diagnosis, endometriosis diagnosis. But I was never told, they told me low carbon exercise, but just threw
Yeah.
metformin at it and called it a day.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like I was saying, like after I had my son and I went to the postpartum visit, the OB ended up telling me, well, that's just PCOS. And she's like,
Mm.
that's just what it is. And I'm like, so I'm stuck like this. And she's like, well, unfortunately, like this is PCOS. Like you're probably gonna have weight issues for forever. And I'm like, that's not okay
That's
with me.
so encouraging. I'm just kidding.
I know, right? Like you're stuck in your body. Too bad, so sad, which is not what she said, but that's how I
Read
took it.
between the lines. Read in between lines for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, it
Yeah.
is saying like you have this issue. You're kind of going to have this issue forever. In that sense. Yeah. Yeah, I get it. And I always try to like think from their point of view too. Like I understand why they say that because I know it's just what they're taught. And so they're only like saying, what they know. So I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time and well, you have more of a healthcare background than someone who's like not a nurse, but for any average person like that, puts all their trust in that, they're gonna like literally live out their life believing that there's nothing else they can do, which is so sad to think about. I don't know, I'm kind of a control freak, so
Yes.
I'm like, to think that I have something not in my control in the sense of like health kind of geeks me out. So, but we do have control, thankfully, with a lot of what we do. But yeah, I can see that where that can be very, I don't know, just not motivating or encouraging to the
Not at
patient.
all.
So you tried so much. And I know that stress has been something I know even Claire and I were talking and we're like, yeah, Anna like stresses, she's like a go person. I think it's your personality too. Like really having a hard time slowing down and also being like a working mom, again, mom of two as well, because that
Mhm.
is a transition.
Yes.
When first time moms have a baby, I'm like, you don't know. You don't know yet. Like
You
first time
don't.
one babies are great. They sleep,
Yes.
they poop, you nap with them. Oh, it's amazing. But you can't have that when you have a toddler running around. And like,
No.
so when you have multiple, it gets harder. It's just a
Mhm.
different type of hard. So have you found anything yet that has helped you slow down? Or if you haven't found anything yet, what are some things you're planning to try?
So honestly, as far as like the stress goes, I did not realize I was as stressed out as I was until I got my blood sugar under control. Like I kind of look
Mm.
at this whole thing as I had blood blood sugar issues and elevated cortisol without knowing that the cortisol part was even in there. But I had the elevated blood glucose, not knowing that I wasn't taking care of that like I should because I was eating hidden sugar like I didn't know was actually there, and I was eating gluten which I didn't know I shouldn't be eating, like all those things. So
Yeah.
once I got my blood sugar under control, like some brain fog was lifted, right? And so then
Yeah.
Claire and I started working, and I'm like, look, like she said, your insulin resistance isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, so why am I holding on to weight? And then that's what kind of started this whole
Stress
journey.
talk. Yeah.
Um, but I never, and I'm talking even up until like 4 weeks ago, I did not realize how stressed out I was. I could not like,
Yep.
I could not mentally um get myself there. Like I started really thinking about just like my whole life because when the cortisol came back elevated, I'm like, okay, this is starting to make sense. Um,
Okay. I was literally going to ask you that of like with your Dutch, did seeing the results kind of help you grasp the reality of being stressed?
yeah, and that's what I was getting to
Okay.
is like I didn't know I was stressed. I really didn't until Claire's like, look, I think it's your cortisol because I'm the one that asked for the Dutch because I'm like something's off, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I started telling her, we started like really deep diving into my symptoms that I didn't know were symptoms. You live with your body that you're used to. And I'm like, I didn't think that certain things were symptoms. I thought that was my body. And then Claire's like, no, actually, that is a symptom. So when we start
Mm.
talking about that, and when I found out about the cortisol, like I started to really, really, really think about the way that my body would react to stuff without me even meaning for it to.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, just the simplest, I would be at the grocery store and like my work cell phone has a certain set, like a different text tone than my personal one, right? And if I were to
Oh,
hear
good
that
idea.
text tone, right? If I were to hear that
That's a great
text
idea.
tone in the grocery store, my heart would start racing, like pounding. Like because it
Wow.
because when I get a text from my work phone, it could be someone calling out for the next day or whatever it could be.
And you got to
Or
figure it out. Yeah.
yeah, and then I told Claire that this is really what did it for me. I was laying in bed one night and my husband was going from the bathroom to the bed and he ran into something, like either the hamper or something, and it made like a loud noise, but I'm literally laying in bed relaxing. Just that noise made my heart pound out of my chest. And he got in
Ooh.
bed and I was like, my heart's pounding out of my chest. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, that stressed me out literally that much just from you doing that. And he's like, why? And I'm like, does your heart not like beat out of your chest when stuff like that happens? And he was like, no. And so then I started to realize, oh my gosh, like I really
Yeah.
am that stressed out. I am in fight or flight like
Yeah.
so easily.
Yeah. I think you hit it a nail on the head of the baseline is when you're a stressed out person and your baseline is this. And there's people that handle stress very well and can go about their day and get stuff done and be productive. And it doesn't look like it from the outside, but like low key, like your baseline is high. And so
Yes.
you don't realize it until you lower it. And then you look back and say, wow, okay, yeah, I was really stressed out. Because yeah, I think sometimes too, there's even like slightly like not an addiction. I don't use that word, but there's kind of like we get used to cortisol and how it feels. And so if we don't feel that way, then we start thinking like, am I not being productive? Am I not moving forward? When in reality we are, but we're just so addicted to what that feels like that that's our
Hmm.
normal. So anything less
Hmm.
is like we're not doing enough. And I think too, as moms, like we feel that guilt, and especially working moms, like I'm not doing enough. Like I need to be doing this all the time. And so it is interesting how I actually am seeing a movement. So I do love it on like Instagram and stuff like that, of like the slowing down. Like people are trying to do things that fill up their cup and trying to slow down, and even things like making sourdough bread or whatever. Meat is getting more chickens, but it forces me to slow down to like go outside. And so I am seeing a movement of that, which is really cool because the hustle culture is starting to expire, which is nice and much needed.
Yes.
So, have you found anything that has helped at all? Or what are you like, what are some things that you're planning or you're wanting to try to do to reduce your stress?
So, honestly, the cortisol calm has
Oh, I love
really,
that blend.
really helped me. The day that Claire and I had this conversation, I said, Claire, I need all the help I can get. Like, I had realized I was so stressed out that, I listened to your video and you're like saying it's more lifestyle changes than anything. We can throw
Yes.
supplements all we want, but it's really lifestyle changes. But I'm like, I can't make the lifestyle changes because I'm so stressed out. It was
Mm-hmm.
like the
Mm-hmm.
craziest thing ever. I started taking that cortisol calm, and I'm not even joking. I told Claire within 48 hours, my heart, like the tachycardia disappeared. And I'm
Nice.
like, Claire, I'm looking at like, how long does this stuff normally take effect? It's like a week or two. I said, I promise you. She's like, if you really, really need it, like it's possible that it can work that fast. And I'm like, well, it did.
That's
So
awesome.
that has really helped in the sense where I can breathe now. Like I can
Yeah.
actually now think about how to deal with stress. So I've been doing that walks. I live basically in the woods, so trying to stay outside as much as possible. I love being outside, sunshine. I've tried some meditation, which I'm still getting used to and
Yeah.
still trying to figure out, but just the complete opposite of what I would normally do, which is go, 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 go. And that's what my mind still tells me to do. But I
Yeah.
try and just like take a deep breath and I try and just slow down.
Yeah. I love doing, I don't know, I guess it's kind of more of like more active meditation. But whenever I feel like my brain is just like constantly going, like I'll take a few deep breaths and like kind of be in that like meditative state, but then I'll have like my iPad and I'll like that's just where I journal. So that's why I have it. If you notebook, that's fine. But I'll just actively kind of like write down my thoughts. And I know sometimes with meditation, we just kind of like shush them away, but I'm such a fan of like bringing it out of my brain and onto paper. I feel like
Hmm.
that like actually makes it kind of go away in a sense because it's now out of my brain. So like I'll meditate for a little bit and then I'll journal and then I'll meditate for a little bit and then I'll journal. But yeah, usually when I'm like high stress, it's usually when I'm like not doing things like that. And so I know like, okay, I really need to do it. And I love supplements too, because yes, it's the same with like when someone has hypothyroid and they need to take like thyroid medication for a little bit. And it's not a failure at all, but we just don't want to stop there. So I love
Hmm.
that like it helps you feel better to get to that point, right? Like
Yes.
hypothyroid, someone's super tired. It helps them get some energy enough to start making those changes. So like that's totally fine. But yeah, unfortunately, most people are like, oh my gosh, this herb works great. It makes me less stressed. And then they don't do anything else. But I'm like, then you're constantly going to have to be relying on the supplement, right? So like, and it is stress is hands down, I'm with you, my hardest thing as well because yeah, it's my personality of like, I want to achieve so much and YOLO and I may die tomorrow. So like, let's just take every day by the horns, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I need to keep myself in check too. So I feel the struggle with that 100%. I can eat healthy. I can work out, all that. Great, 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 great. Stress? No, that's like another thing.
Hmm.
But I love that you connected the two to stress and blood sugar because that's huge because I see people very often eat great and their blood sugar is insane. And then when they either start sleeping or they reduce stress, then their blood sugar goes back to normal with no dietary changes. Like that's how impactful it is. So I know you did the continuous glucose monitor. What was like your most surprising finding, I guess, when you were doing it? Like a certain food that surprised you or habit?
Probably just something as simple as like a few potatoes. Like
Oh no,
just
do
like
they spike?
yes, like just um like just some sweet potatoes, like some sauteed sweet potatoes or um regular potatoes. That's my biggest thing. Like it was spiking big time. Like I was eating like a balanced meal. I was eating the carbs at the end, like I was supposed to and all this stuff, but my blood sugar, it never
Yeah.
got like super high. It was just I could feel the effects of it though too. So Claire was like, look, it's not something that you can't have. She's like, just
Yeah.
know that this is what it does to your body. So I
Yeah.
don't eat potatoes anymore. Just it's not worth feeling the tachycardia or the feeling that I get when my blood sugar comes back down to normal.
Yeah.
It's not worth it for me like at this time.
Yeah, for sure. And for everyone listening too, yes. And there's people that I see potatoes affect them not at all. And even
Hmm.
if no matter what the timing is or whatever, timing of the plate, it's just not an issue for them. So there is definitely bio-individuality with that for sure. But yes, sometimes when there's a food that spikes you, that doesn't mean forever too. It also means like when you just start improving blood sugar, most of the time, if you want potatoes, then yeah, you can handle it. But when you're like in deep into like maybe insulin resistance or something, then yes, we want to try to control as much as we can while we help improve like insulin sensitivity. And then when your body's kind of ready to get back to that, like, hey, I'm way better. And yeah, potatoes will still spike you because I mean they are carbs, but so I find that they don't spike as much. Um, or yeah, people just can handle them better. So yeah, they still may spike because they are carbohydrates and your pancreas and insulin is working, but like they just can handle it better and not feel the symptoms like that you're feeling. So that's why
Hmm.
it's like health is always like an ebb and flow journey. Like some things you can do, but that doesn't mean forever. And it's just constant, basically. What would be your favorite lab that you've done? Because you did stool testing, Dutch, CGM. Like what was your favorite if you had to pick one?
Honestly, probably the Dutch because I don't feel like I'd be where I am knowing what I know if I hadn't done the Dutch. I thought the
Yeah.
stool test was really interesting, but I wasn't having like a whole lot of GI issues.
Hmm.
I still liked learning, everything that I did learn.
Yeah.
The CGM I felt like was nice as far as lifestyle changes for what to eat currently. Um,
Yes.
and kind of like I have that graph in my head of like the spikes and stuff when I eat certain things. I think about stuff like that. And I think about like how certain foods would affect my blood sugar and how I don't, some things just, it's not worth it to me, right? I don't want to put my
Yeah.
body through that if I don't have to. So I thought that was really neat too, but it's just the Dutch test, I feel um, like I said, has gotten me where I am. If I hadn't have done the Dutch, I feel like I'd
Yeah.
still be in the dark.
And you had symptoms too that for the Dutch. And what was it? Was it flushing? Oh my gosh, or something that I can't.
Wait, the
Yes,
biggest thing
something in your
for
face,
me
right?
was the facial flushing. Like we had
Yes.
talked about that and I had told Claire I didn't know that was a symptom, but I've been researching on the site too. Like functional medicine is a lot different than what I learned in nursing school. It's really nowhere near the same.
So
I never
interesting.
learned that facial flushing and stuff like that is a symptom of anything. I thought that was my body. And I'm telling Claire, I'm like, it's just my facial flushing is not going away. And I notice it mostly when I'm at work, which is a stressful environment, right?
Feel that.
It is. I mean, if I have facial flushing at home too, but I would literally just be sitting at my computer typing and my face is on fire. And I'm like, what in the
Wow.
world? And I'm like going like this, and I'm like, what is wrong with my hormones? And I'm postpartum. I get that. And I know it
Yep.
takes a while for those to get back in line, but I'm like, there's just something off. And so we like kept talking about it. And I had seen something where I think testosterone was off and they were holding on to all this weight. And I'm like, what if it's a hormone? Like, what if it's one of my hormones? Because we weren't gonna do the Dutch. I don't know the other one. What's the other choice?
I think it was, I think you and Claire were potentially talking micronutrient, right?
Yeah.
For deficiencies
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. And I'm like, hey, are we going to test my hormones at any point? And she's like, well, we were going to do this one, but Dutch is a choice. And I'm like, I think I should do hormones. And she was like, absolutely. She's like, we can look into that. And then that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, yeah. I know the Dutch is hard too postpartum wise because the sex hormones are just kind of all over the place and sometimes you get your period, sometimes not. So, not that that's a waste by any means, but like it's just not as helpful, but like the adrenal part is for sure so helpful.
Yes,
Because it's yeah, when you're in fight or flight or I mean your body, especially with weight, like really leans into safety. And so if your body is feeling that this world is chaotic, which I mean, I
it
guess it
is.
is. Like I like to explain it that which people don't realize, but like working and just like I don't know, having a lot to do is equivalent to a robber breaking into your house or a tiger chasing you. It's the same physiological response.
Hmm.
Your body doesn't know that like one is worse than the other. They're just both very stressful.
Hmm.
And so it's really helpful to just kind of see that data and like yeah understand like what is your baseline, and I feel like it does open up your eyes to just I don't know really how stressed you are and how much it just impacts weight. And I totally see that in so many people of like losing weight but gaining it back because there's still the underlying like stressor factor because diet will get you a little bit there. And I don't think that there's honestly, as long as I've been doing this, there's I find not a person that has like one singular issue or multiple issues that it's one thing. Like I never find it's ever just diet. It's usually like a little bit of diet, a little bit of stress, a little bit of like
Hmm.
lack of sleep, a little bit of like crappy beauty products, like childhood trauma. Like there's usually like a combination of everything, and like everything kind of dips into that bucket, and then your bucket overflows. So
Hmm.
that's why it's like we can't just look at even just food, which is very important, but it's not the full picture. And that I see is a reason why some people will lose and then gain, because there's still like that really heavy stress factor in the background. And I
Hmm.
will say like stress weight is like the slowest to lose, which is so annoying.
So
But
I've
it's
noticed.
yes, and it's because it usually takes more time and intention and lifestyle change. It's not just something in one day or 2 days you can be like, oh yeah, I can eat healthy for 2 days and I'm good. Like no stress. It takes so long to come down because it's usually that like more intense decisions to make of changing up lifestyle. So yes, it's very annoying
But the
how
way that
slow it is.
nobody knows that is what is hurts me to my core. Like this
Yeah,
diet culture that's just eat less, exercise more, put in less than you put out, like all of that. It's not one size fits all. And not a lot of people know that.
for sure. And how do you feel like, yeah, you said your education was different. And obviously we need that education. You saving lives and like life or death situations. Like Western medicine, don't come to me for that. Like Western medicine totally is way better. But how do you feel knowing what you know, like, and what you went through with training, and then like the little things you've learned? Like, do you, like, I don't know, where do you stand? What are your thoughts? I'm so curious.
It's just so different. I mean, just the concept of, I mean, like you did a post the other day about or you were talking about how cancer is preventable. Like
Oh gosh.
stuff like I know. No, I enjoyed it. I liked it. Something
Some
like
people did
that.
not.
No, I liked it. Something like that, and you were to take it into like a nursing program and talk about it, you're not going to learn anywhere near the same, you know? And I told Claire, I like to kind of be in the middle. I'm not all
Me
the
too. Yeah.
way one way and I'm not all the way the other. Like since this journey and really kind of before too, I like being in the middle and I like
Yeah.
dipping from both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's just it's not the same. That's all I can say. What
That's
I
so,
learned
yeah.
in nursing school and even the way I um take care of people and or have how I've taken care of people in the past, it's not the same model that functional medicine is, which is not good or bad.
Yeah. It's just
It's
different.
not the same.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, like there are situations, getting in car accidents, like so many emergency things that like, no, functional medicine is not the time or the place for that. Like that's where Western medicine comes in. And I am so grateful that we have access to both. But yeah, unfortunately, conventional is still taught to be, this is all you need. Like there's no, like you usually don't need to do anything else. Like that's just kind of where our healthcare system is, which kind of sucks. So yeah, I love when nurses like, start like diving into this and then they, yeah, have such a balanced approach because of what they've learned. And would you confirm that like with what you've learned when they're, which I don't know, I guess that's a hard question to answer because maybe you are more in like emergent situations or times where like medicine is absolutely needed. But is like education just taught like someone has an issue and here's the medication for it? Or are you taught a little bit further beyond that?
I wasn't. And even like dialysis isn't a good example because it's a little different than like hospital nursing, but I have like a med surge background, where you're taking care of a plethora of issues, right? You're taking care of anything and everything. And just even like, let's take a diabetic patient, for example, and a diabetic patient's breakfast is a muffin, big muffin, and orange juice with
Right.
maybe a
Is this
little
at
bit
the
of,
hospital?
yeah, with maybe a little bit of protein and even like some kind of fruit. And I'm like, even then, which I am not the same person I am now as I was 6, 7, 8 years
Yeah.
ago, knowing what I know. But even then, I was like, wow, like they're diabetic and that's a lot of carbs. But so no, you're taught, if someone's diabetic, you give them insulin.
And that's
That's
it. Like,
that's the treatment. You don't now, are they on like a certain carb diet a day? Yes, but
right.
are those carbs really should they be eating those carbs or that many of carbs? But you learn, you treat it. You treat the blood sugar,
Interesting. Yeah.
you
And
know?
again, for emergent situations, we need people. We need that. We absolutely
Mhm.
need that side of healthcare. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just like we're there's more to it though. But it is so funny that even like yes, I think all of our dietitians have had spent some time in the hospital. Even beyond like rotations and stuff, but like truly like had a job at the hospital. And they always share like how crazy it is, like the recommendations that they like give. And they're like, this is so cringe. And it's also though, there's like a lot of people that get to that point. They're usually older too, and I have heard this with dialysis as well. Like my mom, she's definitely one of them. Of just like kind of not caring. I mean, they care, but like they've like had their habits for so long, like let's pretend like 60 years of their life. And so they're just kind of like, meh. And so my dietitians were like saying how sad it is because it's just like in one year and out the other. And it's just kind of like, yeah, a rotating issue. And that makes me, again, so sad. It's like, okay, is that our fault in the healthcare field? Again, is saying like, oh, you have diabetes, you'll have this forever. You just got to take your insulin. And like, they just don't have belief that like changing their life would work. And that makes me sad.
It makes me so sad. I told Claire like when all of this starts to like it started to like click for me more. Like I said, I've been kind of on this journey for a couple years. Um and I started to like I was starting to learn like more of the functional way of things and approaching it from that sense. And I'm like, Claire, like, how do you even like go to the grocery store and see people with these issues? Like you can see it on people. And I'm like, I was like, I was so torn. I'm like, how do you even live life? Like, this is so much. Claire said it is. It's a lot to
Yeah,
adjust to. Like when you've seen the side of things, you cannot look at anything the same anymore. I can't.
I can't. Oh my gosh, I can't.
I
Whole
can't
Foods
imagine.
Whole Foods is not a big deal because like most people are there and they're like trying to get like better things. But like yeah, when I go to
Yeah.
like HEB or some, which is a store here in like Texas, or whatever, and I see like I remember I actually just saw this like a couple weeks ago, and it was like a mom and there was a toddler and literally their cart was just full of like processed food and like not even like trying to be healthy processed food. I mean, it's like the
Yeah.
worst of the worst. And yeah, like I first thing that pops up into my brain is like the cancer rates, like 1 in 3 in women and 1 in 2 in males, but they were women. So I'm like 1 in 3. And I'm like, and this is like the foundation. And it's just like, I'm not surprised, but it kills me because obviously, like, I'm not going to sit there and be like, hey, you should probably feed your kid better. That's so not me. Even though I'm very blunt, but I'm not that blunt because I know everyone's on their own journey and on their own whatever. But that's really tough for me, again, not to be able to help in any way. And it just is what it is. And we got to let people come to this conclusion on their own and be ready. But it kills me inside. It kills me inside.
It has to. I remember when I was the nurse at the hospital, this patient, I can't remember the cancer, I can't remember anything like that, what kind, but I do remember it's something that the patient had, she'd started doing her own research and she was talking to me about it. She was like, look, like, I feel like this is something that I could have prevented. She's like, I've been reading about,
Mm.
stuff in plastics and stuff on in our food and like stuff in water. And she's like saying all this stuff and products. And I was not ready to hear stuff like that. I
Yeah,
hadn't learned that. I'm like, this lady, like,
she's
that's a
crazy.
little too crunchy for me. I don't know what she's talking about. Like, this lady needs this, this, and this. I don't know what she's talking about. I remember the oncologist coming in the room. This lady's in tears and she's asking him the same things. She's like, is there something that I could have done? He said, absolutely not. He said, this is what was supposed to happen. This is what happened, and this is what we're gonna do about it. And I'm like, I'm listening to the doctor, This
Yeah,
I don't know where this lady got this stuff, but
it's
like
crazy.
I remember that. That was probably 8 years ago. And
Wow.
here I am 8 years later. I'm like, oh my gosh, the lady wasn't crazy, but that's not something that you hear.
Oh, see, and that's where some people, yeah, some of the responses I got, there really wasn't that much. I tend to have like a really great community online, but I know that that's not, you're going to get responses. But the responses that I got was basically just victim mentality of I didn't do this to myself or whatever. And I know that you're not I know no one's intentionally doing it.
No,
And it comes from lack of education. So I get that maybe you didn't have the resources at the time and you didn't know and you're on birth control for 40 years or yeah, you grew up on a standard American diet and like you just always thought that was okay. So like I get to a point where yes, there's no knowledge about that. And so yes, obviously, a diagnosis happen, but I'm like, I don't know it. And I was trying to put myself in their shoes. I'm like, no, if I had a diagnosis, I would want to know, be like, shoot, I did not make the best decisions. I'm taking accountability for it. Now, what can I do to change moving forward? Because we're here where we're at, but what can I do to change moving forward? And I'm like, why would you want to think that you don't have control? That's scary to think that you
it's
have
extremely
no
scary.
control. Oh
Yes.
my gosh, my Enneagram 8 is like dying inside. I'm like, no, I want to have control. I would love to be held accountable and be like, yeah, I definitely I didn't know, but I didn't make the best decisions and here we are. So I don't know. I personally don't understand that mindset because I'm like, no, I would want to think like, yeah, I have control. There's things that I can do to help my body. But I don't know. It's just so tough and expansive, especially with like the cancer world and stuff. And I'm like, y'all, the like rates are increasing very insanely, and the amount of young people, less than 30, that are getting cancer that never used to be a thing. I'm like, you guys think this is just happening randomly? Like, you don't, there's no, I don't know, like not saying that there's again one thing that stands out of like, oh, it's this chemical like glyphosate. Oh, it's a Roundup. No, I think
Yeah.
it's a combination. But yeah, I think that's why we're going to start seeing this still worsen until we take accountability and say, hey, this is stuff that I'm doing in my life, or what I'm exposed to, what I'm buying with my money, what I'm voting for. Yeah,
I
it's
think
going to
it's
keep
hard to take
happening.
accountability, and not saying that it's easy to not, but it's hard. It's hard to
Yeah,
say, okay, well, if I did that, then that means I've got to make all these changes. That's
yeah.
not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I have loved this conversation. So what are some wins that you have seen while working with us? I know your journey has been an absolute roller coaster, but what are some wins, symptom wise, like whether it's like energy or I don't know, whatever it is.
More energy. I was at the point, it was probably about 2 months ago. I literally could have pulled my car over in the mornings and fallen asleep. I was so tired. I could have fallen asleep right after I woke up. I said, Claire, there's something wrong. Like I can sleep
Wow.
a
And you're young.
full 8 hours of sleep, and I'm gonna fall asleep while I'm getting ready. So definitely energy, just generalized like better feeling. Like I just feel better. I don't have the brain fog. I can like think through things. My anxiety is way more under control. I have a lot more work to do with that. Um,
Feel
but
that.
just generalized just better, but more than anything, mentally having gone on this journey and learning what I have learned, like that, and really changing, I believe, the projection of my life,
Yeah.
you know?
For sure. For sure. Have you seen any, I don't know, I'd have to look at your labs. Have you seen any improvement in like insulin or PCOS? Like, did you ever have like a lot of cysts? Have you ever gotten that rechecked? And
So checked my hemoglobin A1C. I want to say that was back in December, January. Completely normal hemoglobin A1C.
yay,
Um,
good.
Claire said that I technically don't have insulin resistance. Like my
Yay.
body is able to handle that. Okay.
Yay, good.
So all of that looked better, which is super exciting because I thought that was something that I had forever and I couldn't do anything about.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with all the changes that I've made to redo the Dutch in several months and see where I'm at. Got a lot of work to do before then, but
I know, right? I know. And it's so funny because even like naturally stressed out individuals like myself, even if I do or I like plan too much of like healthy things, like, okay, I'm going to sauna and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do a castor oil pack and then like all these healthy things. But if I, for my personality, if I end up making like this long list that actually stresses me out and totally negates all the healthy things like that I'm actually doing. So yes, stress is just like such a wild ride because again, with our personalities of go, 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 let's like load it up. We got all these things. We can sometimes even backfire. And really, ultimately, the answer is like slowing down and even just doing less.
yeah, and
So,
that's what I was asking Claire. I was like, am I really who I even think I am? Which I know sounds crazy,
so
but
deep.
because I have my cortisol is so elevated, like, am I really as much of a go-getter as I think I am? Like, I
Oh,
looked all the way back to
oh,
high school, middle school. I've always been a very driven person. I've always wanted to make good grades, all of that, yes. But am I really as driven as I have been, or as like pushed myself as much as I have been just in like the last 6 months? Like, Claire was like, well, you might see a little bit of a change in your personality because you do
I
have
love
a
that.
very high cortisol. Like, and I'm like, okay, like I was starting to stress out about the stress. It was just a whole big thing. But I'm so fight or flight, and I still
Yeah.
am. I know I am because there's little things can happen. I don't have the tachycardia anymore, but I know that there's so much more improvement still to be done. But I can tell literally just in the past like 3 weeks, I don't get like I'm not
Yeah.
as like, oh my God, I got to get that done right now. Like I've
Yeah.
been able to like
Yes.
realize, all right, Let's make a list. Let's go down the list one at a time. You can't do it all at once. So that is like almost a breath of fresh air because it's something I felt like I couldn't maintain. It was
Yeah.
almost too
Yeah.
much, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love that reflection. Good for you for going down, like really trying to understand, like just, yeah, there's so much that's connected to our childhood, that like we don't realize, and just to reflect back and understand, like, is that who I am? And honestly, yeah, like personality traits can totally change too. So even if you were go, 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 people can end up not being go, go, go. It's just a bunch of unlearning. And again, like, was it just an addiction to like stress hormone? Like, does our body crave that? And then that just doesn't feel good. I was gonna say uncomfy, and then do you watch Love is Blind?
No.
Okay, never
I always wanted
mind.
to. I need to.
Yes, you need to. If you just need something to literally just like watch the train wreck, just do. But anyways, there was a girl that said she was like crying in the fight, and she's like, I was uncomfy. And anyways, I was literally about to say that, but that scene popped in my head and I started laughing. So, oh yes. Anyways, if you do need to watch a season, this season is the best one. So definitely, if you ever need to just brain dump and not think of anything else, that's a good one to watch.
Yes, definitely.
Well, thanks so much for coming on with me today and chatting about your journey. I'm so excited to see where you go next. And hopefully that is just less stress and enjoying time with the babies. Even though you are in a hard season of life, but it doesn't always have to be that way. I can definitely attest it does get better on certain levels where they can start to, take care of themselves. They don't always have
Mhm.
to be the main caretaker. So there is light at the end of the tunnel for that. But you're doing great. It was really great connecting. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.